Families in Massachusetts emergency shelters are now limited to a 9-month stay through a new law Governor Maura Healey signed this week. The law also approves $400 million in new funding for the shelter system and prompted Healey to press the Biden administration to expedite migrant work permits. But those permits are just the first step. According to Healey's office, out of 3,500 new migrants in the state who've already gotten their permits, only around 700 have actually gotten jobs. So what's getting in the way here? I was joined recently by GBH News reporter Sarah Betancourt, Jeff Thielman, president of the refugee agency, the International Institute of New England, and Modlaire Phanord, who arrived from Haiti last year and now lives in a state shelter with his wife and young child. Well, Sarah, I want to talk about your reporting here because I know that such an emphasis has been put on what's happening to the new arrivals that are coming into Massachusetts. Many of them actually do have work authorizations. Is that correct?
So when a lot of people arrive, they're coming under different statuses. They might be asylum seeking temporary protected status. So depending on what different status they're in or applying for, then they can apply for work authorization. The majority of people who went through the state's work authorization clinics in November were here under humanitarian parole. So they can legally be here for 2 years and apply for a work permit during the 2 years. The problem really was for a while was that there was such a backlog and it took such a long time to get a work permit. But now those are being streamlined pretty significantly by the federal government. But it is just the first step. Once you have a work permit, you need to be able to get the skills to apply for a job, get out there and find one, and also compete with other people.
Jeff, I know so many nonprofits have sort of stepped in to help navigate this process. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing in trying to help folks, just try to get a job?
A big barrier to getting a job is your ability to speak English. The faster you learn English, the more English you know, the more likely you are to get hired. Employers want to see that. They also want to make sure you have transportation to and from work. And so if you're not in a secure, stable, long-term living situation, that can be an impediment. Also, people need some help with the basic skills you need to work in the United States. Finding a job in this country is different than finding a job in other countries. So, people need help with some of the basics to get those first jobs.
Modlaire, I would love to know how difficult has it been for you in coming to Massachusetts and trying to find work?
For the Massachusetts, very complicated because I don't speak English. Very important for speak English for the job. I apply and the work permit. In October and November, I got my work permit. And then after 3 months, I got the job. I'm working now in Betancourt.
Yeah. Sarah, one thing that it seems like we hear jobs reports after job reports that there are tons of open positions where these new arrivals can step in and help with the workforce here in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing so many reports of people, state residents, leaving Massachusetts because of the high cost of housing. And we're seeing a lot of reports of there being an economic crisis as well. But we have so many new arrivals coming in here. So getting them to work is a huge part of making up that difference, that pitfall of, economic advantage. The problem is that really exists here is like getting people to jobs in the right amount of time, getting them the right salary. So I did interview a couple of employers. One was Amazon and another was Imperial Distributors, a distributor company in Worcester. And they mentioned how, they partner with a Century Care Alliance, a refugee agency in Worcester, to talk to new arrivals, interview them. And if people don't have the right level of English, they refer them back to Centuria. They take an English class, and they'll actually re-interview them for the positions because they want to see people who are willing to stick around with them for a while, and they really do need employees.
Yeah, in fact, we talked about the high cost of living. I think just about everyone can agree it's expensive to live in Massachusetts and work in Massachusetts. From your reporting, we actually pulled out a statistic here. A minimum wage job at 40 hours a week actually generates about $31,000 annually. That's where the median asking price for an apartment in Boston, in the area of Boston, Greater Boston, is about $34.50 for a two-bedroom apartment, and that's according to Apartment Advisor. And moving usually costs multiple months' rent. This is a significant barrier, I imagine, for lots of folks who are trying to just start new in this country.
I can imagine it as well. Like, you're in an emergency shelter, you have very few savings, and then all of a sudden you do have a job, but it may not pay very much. So this is where the state is trying to step in, and nonprofits are trying to step in to get people into housing, but it might be a subsidized form of housing until they can make a certain amount of money and contribute more to their rent. And that's what's unfolding very slowly across Massachusetts.
Jeff, I imagine your nonprofit, one of the ones that are helping folks, get into permanent housing, which is the goal.
Right. So there's 8 resettlement agencies in the Commonwealth. Sarah mentioned a Century Care Alliance. That's one of them. And our institution, the International Institute of New England, is as well. And so we have a contract, the 8 resettlement agencies, to help 400 families exit the shelter system and find apartments, place them in apartments, using a program that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities had called Home Base. And so, we're looking for apartments every day. We have a team out that's scrambling to find apartments. Greater Boston is very expensive, so we're looking beyond Boston for apartments. We're trying to find places that are less than $3,000 a month for a two-bedroom apartment, even closer to $2,500 per month. So that puts you out of the range here in Greater Boston for the most part. And once we place people in those apartments, then we're going to get them into a new job in the community near where they work. And we often tell people, to be honest with you, we tell families, look, eventually you're going to have to bring in at a minimum wage, you're going to have to work about 60 hours a week. Either, both partners are going to work 30 each, or one's going to work 40, the other's going to work 20. You might work 2 jobs. Maybe you'll get lucky and have a job with overtime. But that's about what you're going to need to make it in this state.
That's, a daunting task. Modlaire, when you left Haiti, was this what the American dream looked like for you?
Yes, I'm very, very happy that, because the government helped me, my family. Now I working. I think I'm very, very happy. I can look more opportunity now.
Yeah, in the future.
In the future.
There'll be more opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to add something. I know Modlaire and his family a little bit. Our agencies work with his family. Modlaire didn't know much English when he came here, but he's gone to the library almost every day to try to learn English. He traveled 4 or 5 months from Chile, where the family went after leaving Haiti, up to the United States. It takes a lot of courage and guts to do that. Very few people can actually manage to do that. He got himself to Massachusetts. He wants to make it, and he wants to stay in the state. So people like Modlaire, they're the future of our state. We've lost population, as Sarah said. People need to come in. People like Modlaire and his family are the future of our state. They want to enter the workforce, and they want to stay here. So, folks like this are my heroes every day. They motivate my team and I to work very hard to help them have a better life here in Massachusetts.
Well, I'm going to ask you, there are so many people, there are a segment of the population that looks upon the migrant, the migrant, what they call the migrant crisis or the influx of arrival, as a negative thing. I mean, what do you speak to them about, what's happening here in the state? When we're talking about, they said they're a drain on resources, it's millions of dollars in the emergency shelter system and things like that.
Well, I say this, 1 in 6 residents of our state are immigrants, about 17%. Our gross domestic product in this greater Boston area, 21% is produced by immigrants. Immigrants pay in state, federal, and local taxes in greater Boston about $17 billion. And we're losing population. So we need people to come to our state. They're coming into a very difficult housing crisis that is not the fault of any of us, actually. It's a tough housing crisis for every single person who tries to live in Massachusetts right now. But these folks are needed in our state. So what I say to people is, we need folks to come. We need them to stay. We need them to work. We need to welcome them. And it's going to make our state better. It's going to make us all better. So that's what I say.
Yeah. Sarah, in your reporting and talking to various nonprofits and things like that, we know that the legislature is working to approve a sunset date on this funding for the shelter system and for migrants and different things like that. We know that that's happening in the legislature. Is there an overarching concern about what happens then? What happens when the state decides that the money has run out for these types of programs?
I'm not sure about a sunset date specifically.
Okay, right,
I
yeah.
think that might be better directed to our State House reporter. But I do know that the legislature is debating in conference committee about how much more to spend in the emergency assistance system, and 2 different versions have been approved by the House and the Senate, and Maura Healey has proposed her own set of ideas for this and how to fund it. And I do know there's a discussion about May 1st, the fact that many migrants in emergency shelters will need to prove that they are looking for work and are taking classes, and there may potentially be a cap on how long they can spend in shelter. Of course, they can apply for an extension, but each time they do that, they need to prove certain things. So that's going to be an interesting hurdle to see play out after May 1st.
What do you, Jeff, anticipate happens when now these regulations will start to roll in, or maybe the state will be less willing to spend as much money on these resources for new arrivals? What do you anticipate happening to folks like Modlaire?
Well, I sincerely hope that people are not sent out of emergency shelters and hotels and into the streets, because I don't think people really want to do that. I mean, I have met with many people who work inside state government, and they care deeply about people that are in the shelters, and they want them treated well and with dignity. So there are rules, and the rules are going to be used to ensure people are taking steps to get jobs, just like you have to take steps to get a job if you're unemployed, to get unemployment insurance, get all the benefits you're supposed to get. So I think that will happen. I sincerely hope that people are not evicted. I think that would be a catastrophe for our state, and I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. This is certainly a conversation that we can continue on for many, many segments to come. Sarah Betancourt, Jeff Thielman, and Modlaire Phanord, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.